Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Renegade Immortal based on novel. So let's start. He had been stuck at the early stage of core formation for a very long time, which was why he was kicked out of the inner sect to become a steward for the outer sect disciples. Wang Lin's cultivation speed gave him a sliver of hope. The sect doesn't care about the life and death of outer sect disciples at all, so it'll be fine if I kill him. This person is also a rogue cultivator, so after he dies, no one will search for him. Qianmu, don't blame me, blame yourself for cultivating too fast. If I wait until you reach the core formation stage, it will be difficult to deal with you, but right now it will be as simple as waving my hand. The middle-aged man flew toward Wang Lin's cave and arrived outside of it in the blink of an eye. The surroundings were completely silent and the middle-aged man was stunned. Normally, when someone was in closed-door cultivation, the door would be completely sealed, but Wang Lin's door was only half-closed. Having eliminated the need to use the jade to open the door, the middle-aged man bravely entered the cave. Although he found it strange, he didn't think a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator would be his match, so he entered the cave. The moment he entered the cave, he saw Wang Lin sitting on the bed calmly looking at him. The middle-aged man's eyes lit up and without a word his hand formed a seal. He silently shot out a ray of spiritual energy toward Wang Lin. He didn't want to kill Wang Lin now, he wanted to capture him and question him before ending his life. Wang Lin's eyes revealed a mocking expression. He slapped his bag of holding and took out the restriction flag. He shook the flag and then a ray of restriction light shot out of it and collided with the ray of spiritual energy. The spiritual energy immediately collapsed. You're courting death. The middle-aged man sneered and spat out a 3-inch-long sword. He held the sword and charged toward the restriction gas. In his mind, this late-stage foundation establishment junior couldn't withstand the power of this flying sword that had been refined by his golden core. But his smile froze. The moment the flying sword touched the restriction gas, a cracking sound could be heard. The sword broke in half straight down the middle. Wang Lin, who was on the stone bed, shook his head and sighed. When I started cultivating, you weren't even born yet. The middle-aged man's face was pale and he coughed out blood. Without any hesitation, he turned around to leave, but the restriction gas quickly caught him and dragged him back. The middle-aged man opened his mouth to speak, but after a slap from Wang Lin, he let out a miserable groan and coughed out a mouthful of blood along with some broken teeth. I'm from the soul refining sect. The middle-aged man was terrified from the pain. But before he finished speaking, Wang Lin slapped him again. A hint of madness entered the middle-aged man's eyes. He had never been humiliated like this since he started cultivating. I'll fight to the end. The middle-aged man shouted, and then cracks appeared on his golden core. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Wang Lin. It would be a waste to let your golden core explode. Wang Lin shook the restriction flag in his hand and 3 branches of restriction gas immediately shot out. In the blink of eye, they entered the middle-aged man's body and wrapped around his golden core. To the middle-aged man's shock, his golden core was torn out of his body. Wang Lin grabbed the golden core and swallowed it. The middle-aged man's body trembled. He coughed out blood and his body weakened. He screamed in his heart, he is not at the foundation establishment stage. He is not a foundation establishment cultivator. All of his spiritual energy was being drained from his body. He clenched his teeth and managed to squeeze out, who exactly are you? You don't deserve to know. Wang Lin arrived before the middle-aged man and pointed at his brow. The middle-aged man's eyes widened before they lost their color and he fell down. Wang Lin shook his head. He didn't want to kill, but this person forced him to. He hit the middle-aged man's body with his hand and the entire body turned to ashes and disappeared. Wang Lin walked out of the cave and charged toward cave 743. Outside of cave 743, Wang Lin waved his hand to shoot a restriction at the door. Then his body turned into a ray of white light and charged toward the door. The moment he touched the door, his body disappeared. When he reappeared, he was inside cave 743. The reason he was able to get through was because of that restriction. Who? A gasp came from inside the cave. The butcher-looking guy was sitting on the stone bed, with a look of disbelief on his face. But after seeing that it was Wang Lin, he became angry, but he suddenly felt like cold water was being poured over him. He didn't know that Wang Lin had entered through a restriction, so the only thing he could think of was teleportation. Sen. Senior, his voice was trembling. Before he could say more, Wang Lin arrived before him. Wang Lin pointed at the butcher-looking guy's brow, causing him to pass out. After throwing the person to the side, Wang Lin didn't even bother to look at him. His eyes fell on the right wall. Shortly after, Wang Lin slapped his bag of holding and a flying sword appeared. He pointed at the wall and the flying sword cut into it. The sounds of stone being smashed filled the room and soon, a hole big enough for a person to crawl through appeared. Wang Lin entered the hole after the flying sword. With the flying sword opening a path, Wang Lin followed. The tunnel went on for more than 300 feet, and at the end of the tunnel was a room that was glowing gold. Spirit vein or deposit. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. He was filled with joy. He pointed at the flying sword, which let out to him as if it had intelligence, and it quickly went back through the tunnel. In the blink of an eye, it arrived back in cave 743, and stabbed into the ground next to the butcher-like cultivator. The sword instantly exploded into pieces that formed a restriction, trapping the butcher-like cultivator inside. Wang Lin pressed on the wall at the entrance and the walls of the tunnel began to move. Soon, the tunnel behind him disappeared without a trace. Even looking from inside cave 743, one wouldn't be able to see anything wrong. Wang Lin's right hand formed a seal, and he placed a restriction on the spirit vein or deposit. This was the same restriction he had used to get inside cave 743. He charged into the deposit and reappeared deep within it. Now he was in the depths of the mountain. There were countless spirit stone deposits surrounding him, creating a powerful surge of spiritual energy. This spiritual energy couldn't be directly absorbed by cultivators, because there was too much impurity inside it. It needed to be converted before cultivators could absorb it. However, this only applied to low-level cultivators, so Wang Lin didn't care at all. The density of spiritual energy here had reached such a degree that it created a pressure similar to what powerful cultivators could create. However, this was all just natural spiritual energy, so it couldn't compare to the pressure a cultivator emitted. Wang Lin was immediately affected by the pressure once he charged in. This pressure felt like an entire mountain pressing down upon him. However, this mountain wasn't just pressing from above, it pressed Wang Lin's body from all sides. Crackling sounds came from inside his body as a result. Instead of being worried, Wang Lin was extremely happy. This was exactly the pressure he was looking for. Under this pressure, he could feel his shattered origin soul beginning to reform. "I'm going all the way." He slapped his bag of holding and 3 top-quality spirit stones flew out. Wang Lin took a deep breath before letting out a roar, and then the 3 top-quality spirit stones all exploded. An insane amount of spiritual energy exploded forth, and fused with the surrounding spiritual energy. The pressure Wang Lin was feeling suddenly increased several-fold. Wang Lin bled from his orifices, but his eyes were filled with joy. "Still need a bit more." Wang Lin clenched his teeth, and 2 more top-quality spirit stones appeared and exploded. As if adding a spoonful of water into boiling oil, the spirit vein went crazy. The pressure on Wang Lin's body increased greatly. Under this powerful pressure, the shattered pieces of Wang Lin's origin soul were slowly condensing like pieces of a shattered mirror being put back together. At the same time, an unimaginable amount of spiritual energy entered Wang Lin's body. Even the T-domain and seal couldn't stop it. Wang Lin's cultivation began to recover at an extremely quick pace. Breakthrough to the peak of the late stage of foundation establishment. Core formation, complete. Breakthrough to the early stage core formation. Breakthrough to the mid stage. Breakthrough to the late stage. Breakthrough to the early of stage nascent soul. The spirit vein's core began to dim, and the spirit stone deposits turned to dust which rapidly spread. 10 breaths. Only 10 breaths. In just 10 breaths of time, all of the trees growing on the mountain wilted. The entire spirit vein inside the mountain dimmed and disappeared in just 10 breaths of time. The entire mountain was now a useless spirit vein. At this moment, thousands of outer sect disciples that were cultivating inside this mountain opened their eyes. They all noticed the spiritual energy inside their rooms disappear. After that, a powerful suction force came from below them, sucking away the spiritual energy inside their bodies. Terrified, all of the outer sect disciples used various methods to leave the caves. They no longer dared to stay within them. In the spirit vein deep inside the mountain, Wang Lin suddenly opened his eyes. He immediately teleported and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already outside the mountain. There were outer sect disciples all around him. They were all talking with shock and fear on their faces. All Wang Lin could hear was speculation about the strange event that had just taken place. As for that butcher-like cultivator, Wang Lin controlled the shattered sword to release the restriction to let him come out. When the butcher-like cultivator saw Wang Lin, he immediately became terrified. However, with one cold glance from Wang Lin, he immediately became respectful and no longer dared to make any noise. Just at this moment, a gaze was cast upon him. He turned his head and saw that beautiful woman looking at him with a friendly smile. Wang Lin frowned. He didn't have time to deal with this woman. He glanced coldly at her and then withdrew his gaze. Peak of the mid-stage of nascent soul. I didn't expect that my action just now would allow me to recover to this level of cultivation. And along with this, my origin soul has begun to recover. Although it is not completely healed, I can now use my domain. Wang Lin took a deep breath. His eyes were calm. However, compared to all of this, the life-to-death and death-to-life experience he gained was even more important. The huge change in the mountain attracted the attention of the inner sect. 3 people came out. One of them was a white-haired elder who emitted a pressure without even being angry. He shouted, "All of you, shut up." The surroundings suddenly became silent. The old man shouted, "Where is Liu Fulin?" After a long time, no one responded. The old man frowned, then he looked at the 2 next to him and the 3 of them flew toward the mountain. Liu Fulin was the middle-aged man that got greedy. As for the 3 of them, they were inner disciples of the soul-refining sect and also the deacons of the outer sect. Wang Lin's eyes faintly lit up. The old man was at the early stage of nascent soul while the other 2 were both at the late stage of core formation. The 3 of them flew into the mountain, but only the old man flew out. He had a very ugly expression on his face. His eyes were filled with confusion, but even more filled with shock. The old man's eyes lit up and he shouted, "You outer sect disciples can just cultivate here. None of you are allowed to leave." Then he took out a piece of jade, recorded some information and threw it. The jade turned into a ray of light and flew into the inner sect. The majority of the outer sect disciples were startled, but there were a few that sat down and cultivated. Wang Lin was one of them. He sat on a giant tree and cultivated. After the old man arrived, he carefully scanned each of the outer sect disciples. When he went into the mountain with his fellow sect members earlier, they were terrified the moment they found out that the entire spirit vein had been wasted. When they went deep into the spirit vein and reached the ores turned to dust the moment they touched them. This occurs when the spiritual energy is sucked out of them too quickly. This whole thing was very strange. He had never heard of or seen anything like this happening since the soul-refining sect was formed. His gaze swept past each of the disciples one by one. He didn't pause on Wang Lin at all. In his eyes, Wang Lin was only at the late stage of foundation establishment, he was not worth noting. Because Wang Lin's origin soul had recovered a bit, no one below the soul formation stage could see through his cultivation. Not long after, more than 10 rays of light flew out of the inner sect and arrived before the old man in the blink of an eye. When they landed, the rays of light became 10 people. Among them were 5 nascent soul cultivators, while the rest were at least at the mid-stage of core formation. One of the middle-aged scholars was at the late stage of nascent soul. He was wearing a black robe and emitted a cold aura like there were countless vengeful ghosts surrounding him. The moment he appeared, the surroundings immediately became cold. His eyes were like lightning as he coldly looked at the mountain and said, "Junior apprentice brother, what exactly happened for you to send that jade?" The old man from before immediately became respectful and said, "Third senior apprentice brother, the spirit vein in this mountain was sucked dry in almost an instant. I suspect it had something to do with these outer sect disciples." The middle-aged man's eyes lit up and he shouted, "Seal off the surroundings. If anyone dares to leave, kill them. Junior apprentice brother, follow me up the mountain to meet the sect master." With that, he turned into a ray of light and charged toward the inner sect. The old man quickly followed and the two of them entered the inner sect in the blink of an eye. Wang Lin's expression remained calm as he coldly looked at the guards. If he were to call out the mosquito beast, he would be able to escape in an instant. However, the beast was his last resort, and he didn't want to give up such a good cultivation ground. Although his origin soul had recovered a bit, it hadn't been completely reformed yet. He tried to call out the heaven-defying bead, but wasn't able to. Wang Lin pondered for a bit and didn't do anything reckless. Some light came from the horizon as the sun appeared, covering the land with warmth. The light dispelled the darkness. As the surroundings gradually lit up, the middle-aged scholar flew out from the inner sect. Following behind him were 9 people. All 9 of them were wearing red robes. Their ages varied, but the one thing they had in common was that they were all surrounded by large, vengeful souls. Looking at them from a distance, in front of the light of the sun, it looked like they were surrounded by demonic flames that reached the sky. With a gloomy expression, the middle-aged scholar shouted, "Split into 10 groups to be inspected." The 9 red-robed people behind him moved and all activated a technique at the same time. Red gas poured from their sleeves and surrounded each of the thousands of outer sect disciples that were standing outside. The outer sect disciples were split into 10 groups against their will. Along with the middle-aged man, each of them took charge of one group and called the outer sect disciples one by one for inspection. They didn't even need to ask any questions. They simply pointed at the brow of each outer sect disciple, and a few breaths later, they would move on to the next person. Wang Lin was split into the 3rd group. His eyes were calm without any trace of panic or abnormality. These 9 people in red were all only at the mid-stage of nascent soul, so Wang Lin didn't consider them threats at all. Whenever an outer sect disciple passed, they would let out a sigh of relief. As time passed, the surrounding atmosphere became increasingly oppressive. Just at this moment, a green-robed cultivator in the 4th group moved like lightning and attempted to escape. The surrounding inner sect disciples were constantly on guard, so the moment this person tried to escape, a core formation disciple moved to attempt to stop that person. "Scram!" The green-robed cultivator shouted, as he waved his hand, creating a powerful force. The core formation disciple groaned and his body was pushed to the side. Without a word, the green-robed cultivator turned back around and rushed toward the opening. Just as he was about to make it out, the red-robed cultivator, in charge of Group 4, reached out with his hands. "Come back." 5 rays of black light suddenly flew out of his fingers. They moved like lightning and in the blink of an eye drilled into the body of the green-robed cultivator. The green-robed cultivator let out a miserable groan and his body went soft. The red-robed cultivator dragged him back and threw him into the open space in the middle of all the groups. After that, the red-robed cultivator didn't even look at the green-robed cultivator and said, "Next person, come up." All of the outer sect disciples were filled with fear, especially those that came with some bad intentions. Their faces became ugly upon seeing what had just happened. At this moment, the eyes of red-robed cultivator in charge of Group 8 lit up as he looked at the pale-faced disciple before him who had an expression like he was begging for mercy. The red-robed cultivator grabbed the disciple and threw him into the opening in the middle of all the groups. The amount of people in the middle gradually increased. There were now over 30 of them. The red-robed cultivator in charge of the 3rd group threw the disciple before him to the middle and slowly said, "This is normally only done for disciples entering the inner sect, but today it is being used on you outer disciples. So you should all feel proud." Wang Lin's expression remained calm, but his heart was shocked. The soul refining sect had so many outer sect disciples that came with ill intentions, but none of them could escape this kind of inspection. As for the butcher-like cultivator, who was originally in Cave 743, Wang Lin wasn't worried about him. He had already placed a restriction in that cultivator. Although Wang Lin's cultivation level had dropped, the complexity of his restrictions was not something these nascent soul cultivators could see through. In Wang Lin's eyes, this person was kind of interesting. Although the butcher-like cultivator was at the late stage of foundation establishment on the surface, he was really at the pseudo-core formation stage. But it wasn't too weird for outer sect disciples to hide their cultivation levels. You come up. The red-robed cultivator in charge of Group 5 pointed at the butcher-like cultivator. The butcher-like cultivator's body trembled as he quickly went up. The red-robed cultivator pointed at the butcher-like cultivator's brow and then, after a few seconds, he waved his hand. The butcher-like cultivator let out a sigh of relief and didn't dare to look at Wang Lin. He was currently in a state of shock and confusion. When that finger landed on his brow, he felt something cold enter his body. It felt like there was a giant hand going through his memories. This feeling left as soon as it came. Before he could clearly feel what it was, the cold energy left. Not long after, it was Wang Lin's turn. The red-robed cultivator in charge of Group 3 pointed at Wang Lin's brow, then shortly after he said, "Next." Wang Lin calmly walked to the side. More than 1,000 disciples were inspected by noon. More than 100 of them had been thrown into the middle. The middle-aged man threw the last person into the middle and asked, "Did you guys find anything?" One of the red-robed cultivators coldly said, "Aside from these people, who have their own objectives, nothing related to the matter last night." The remaining 9 cultivators all shook their heads. The middle-aged scholar pondered a bit before ordering, "You outer sect disciples go cultivate at the other mountains. There will be someone who will assign rooms to each of you." The outer sect disciples who passed the test all respectfully bowed before flying toward different mountains. As for the more than 100 cultivators in the middle, no one glanced back at them and no one cared about what would become of them. Wang Lin was given a cave in a slightly smaller mountain nearby. He sat inside the cave cultivating, his eyes sparkling all the while. "My cultivation has recovered to the mid-stage of nascent soul. Although the effect of absorbing a spirit vein is good, it is simply too dangerous. If I continue, I might lure out soul formation cultivators, or even soul transformation monsters. I have already caught their attention, so I can't do anything too big. However, when I was absorbing the spirit vein, I found out that there is an even bigger, main spirit vein nearby. The spirit vein I absorbed was only a branch. That main spirit vein should be under the inner sect of the soul refining sect. If I can go there to cultivate, I should be able to recover my cultivation in one go. At that moment, even if I am found out and a soul transformation cultivator comes, I will still be able to escape. If worse comes to worst, I'll rip open space and escape using the star compass." Wang Lin pondered a bit. He knew that the soul refining sect was located in a rank 5 cultivation country, meaning there were soul transformation cultivators in the sect. After thinking for a while, he made up his mind. The competition in June will be the best chance to enter the inner sect. Rumor has it that the soul refining sect's most prized treasure is a soul flag with more than 100 million souls. The moment it appears, the sky changes colors. It is considered one of the top treasures in Suzaku. In addition to that, the soul refining sect focuses on refining soul flags, and all of their techniques relate to the sect's treasured soul flag. Although other sects throughout Suzaku also know how to capture and refine souls, they can't compare to the soul refining sect. If I can learn how they do it and refine a soul flag using wandering souls, it shouldn't be any weaker than the restriction flag. Wang Lin's eyes lit up and he waved his hand. A series of illusionary restrictions appeared and landed on the surrounding walls. Then he took out a pure white celestial jade. This celestial jade was missing a piece, but the celestial energy it gave off wasn't much different from before. Now that my cultivation has recovered to the mid-stage of nascent soul, I can swallow another piece of celestial jade to attempt to break the T mark and seal in my body. Wang Lin took a deep breath, then he broke off a small piece of the jade and put it in his mouth. Unimaginable pain suddenly spread throughout his body. At this moment, in a valley surrounded by mountains in Chu, one could hear crisp laughter and the cries of a tiger filled with grievance. It was spring inside the valley, so the ground was covered in green grass. Little Ju Yu was wearing a coat embroidered with a peony flower, red pants, and she had 2 little pigtails on her head. She was now sitting on top of a tiger with black stripes, and she had a huge smile on her face. Little White, you didn't do as you were told, so I'm punishing you by making you eat with chopsticks today. The tiger let out a growl with a hint of sadness. During this past year, he was constantly being tortured by this little devil. He would often wake up in the middle of the night from a nightmare. All of his nightmares involved this little devil. Ju Yu clapped her little hands and smiled. Your roar is too loud, you need to be softer next time. I suddenly thought of something fun. Can you meow like a little kitten? Little White's growl was now filled with even more despair. I wonder when Uncle will come back. Little White, do you miss Uncle? Ju Yu let out a sigh and patted the tiger's head. The tiger let out a soft growl as an unenthusiastic response. He was still thinking about how a tiger like himself was going to mimic a cat's meow. Tai Yi sat under the pagoda and looked at little Ju Yu with a gentle gaze. After a while, he let out a soft sigh. The news of Wang Lin's disappearance had already spread to Chu, but he decided to not tell Ju Yu. He believed that with his benefactor's strength, he would be able to get out of any danger. If benefactor said he would return within 9 years, then he would definitely come back by then. Tai Yi revealed a look of firm belief in his eyes. 100 feet away from Tai Yi sat the thunder toad. It just lied there, enjoying the warm sun. It had almost been an entire year, and it hadn't moved at all. While looking at the white clouds in the sky, the thunder toad sometimes missed his life inside the land of the ancient god. Ever since it was born, it had lived there and gradually grew up in there. There were constant battles in the land of the ancient god with other beasts for food and territory, and they were often life and death battles. During these countless vicious battles, the thunder toad slowly grew up and eventually learned how to spit out balls of lightning. After that, aside from a few beasts in the land of the ancient god, it didn't have to worry about anyone else. While he was thinking of the past, the thunder toad's stomach expanded and then went back to normal after a while. He thought of Wang Lin. It was Wang Lin who brought him out of the land of the ancient god. But the one he thought of more was that mosquito. Time slowly passed. In the blink of an eye, spring was over and it was now June. June may not have any special meaning to most, but to the outer sect disciples of the soul-refining sect in Pailu, it was a very important time. The competition among the outer sect disciples was going to take place this month. After a series of competitions, one outer sect disciple will become an inner sect disciple. Wang Lin awakened from his closed-door cultivation and opened his eyes. His eyes were clear, but if one looked at them closely, they would see that they shined like the starry sky. The T mark on his face had faded a lot, and only 8 pieces remained. These 8 pieces were also the key points of Sun Tai's seal. The small piece of celestial jade had been completely absorbed by Wang Lin. Under the pressure of the celestial jade, large amounts of the T domain and seal broke off, but he still wasn't able to remove it completely. Wang Lin muttered, "Peak of the late stage of nascent soul." He slowly stood up, took a deep breath, and walked out of the cave. What I comprehend is the heaven's life and death domain. The more I see through the world's life and death, the more intertwined they become. Before, I thought life was life and death was death, but now life can be death and death can be life. I, Wang Lin, have spent most of my life killing, so I have experienced death. In comparison to death, I haven't experienced much life. Li Muwen's new life is one and my own rebirth is another, but it is still not enough. Wang Lin walked out of the cave. He looked at the distant mountain and gently shook his head. My way of thinking has been changing after my rebirth from the ashes, especially during those few months at the Fire Cloud village. The memories from there have been engraved deeply within me. I see life as life and death as death. I see life not as life and death not as death. These two perceptions match the early and mid stages of soul formation respectively. Wang Lin's clothes flapped loudly in the wind. This experience has given me some enlightenment. If I could go back to seeing life and death as death, then my domain will reach the late stage of soul formation. However, I will need another breakthrough to reach the peak of the late stage of soul formation. To get to that point, my domain will also have to reach its completion. The completed domain of a peak late stage soul formation cultivator is still different from a soul transformation cultivator's domain. That Li Yuanfeng's domain was able to take physical form and leave the T mark on my body. This kind of power is not something the domain of a peak late stage soul formation cultivator can compare to. That means that the completion of a domain at the soul formation stage is only one level. Reaching the soul transformation stage requires even more comprehension of one's domain. Wang Lin began to ponder. The current him didn't notice that a beautiful woman was silently watching him from a cave in the distance. This woman's gaze was a bit complicated. It was filled with confusion, doubt, and helplessness. Back in the celestial realm, Senior Ju Yi gave me the ascendant crystal that can help me reach the ascendant stage. This crystal must be formed by the cultivator's comprehension of their domain. Ascendant. I wonder when I will reach the ascendant stage. Right now the seal hasn't been removed, so I don't even any hopes of reaching the soul transformation stage yet. Wang Lin softly sighed. Tian Yunzi accepted me as a disciple. Perhaps I should quickly find him and maybe then I'll have a chance of reaching the ascendant stage. However, I'm a bit unwilling to part with my current cultivation path. Sichunan hasn't awakened yet, and I haven't gotten the planet crystal that can help my G realm breakthrough. What is more important is that everyone on that planet must have rather high cultivation levels. So if I go when I'm too weak, I won't catch Chen Yunzi's attention. Wang Lin was in deep thought until he suddenly seemed to notice something. He turned his head and saw the woman gazing at him. Who exactly is that woman? Wang Lin's eyes lit up and he floated toward that woman's cave. The woman withdrew her gaze and took a few steps back to make space. Wang Lin landed where the woman was standing. He coldly stared at the woman, not caring about how beautiful she was, and said, "Do you know me?" The woman looked at Wang Lin and gently said, "You don't remember me." Wang Lin's eyes lit up. He stared at the woman for a long time, but still couldn't remember where he had met her. The mountain wind blew by and lifted her black hair, making her look like a fairy. She put her hair behind her ear and softly said, "I'm called Liu Mai." Liu Mai. Wang Lin looked at the woman and after a while said, "I don't know you." Liu Mai let out a gentle sigh and then a smile. Her smile was like a blooming flower that immediately overshadowed the surroundings. Senior apprentice Wang Lin, the youth who carried the large sword on his back in the Hengyu sect. Can you really not remember? Wang Lin wasn't shocked at all when she pointed out his identity. When she called herself Liu Mai, Wang Lin had already guessed. Wang Lin blandly said, "The Liu Mai I know is a disciple of the Xian Dao sect with water spirit roots, not a disciple of Suzaku." Liu Mai was startled. This kind of expression rarely appeared on her face. She softly asked, "What does senior apprentice brother Wang mean?" Wang Lin didn't reply, but calmly looked at Liu Mai. Shortly after, Liu Mai lowered her head and softly said, "I'm afraid senior apprentice brother Wang has some misunderstanding. For you to be able to appear in the Xian Dao sect and also be able to appear here in the soul refining sect, I don't believe anyone else besides the country of Suzaku can do this." Wang Lin cut her off and turned around to leave. Liu Mai faintly smiled and said, "With just this much, senior apprentice brother Wang was able to deduce that I'm from Suzaku. Is senior apprentice brother Wang that sure? I think that you are just testing me. Senior apprentice brother Wang, I won't lie to you. I'm indeed a disciple of Suzaku." Wang Lin shook his head, revealed a mocking smile, and said, "Am I really testing you? I have seen a bracelet like yours on Red Butterfly's hand." With that, Wang Lin's body gently floated away. Liu Mai lowered her head and looked at the bracelet on her arm. When the mountain wind blew earlier, it revealed her bracelet. She looked at Wang Lin's figure as he left, Then she let out a sigh and mumbled, "He has changed a lot in the last 500 years. He is no longer an ignorant youth, the current him has a heart of steel." But what exactly is his Tao heart? Part 1 end here.